Let me show you something worth noticing. There's a specific kind of financial pain that doesn't show up in your bank account. It shows up in the things you stop saying out loud. You make enough money that complaining feels inappropriate. You're doing better than most people you grew up with. You have health insurance, a retirement account, maybe even equity in something. But you also can't quite do the things you thought this level of income would allow. And somewhere in that gap, you stop talking about it. This isn't about being broke. Broke has a clarity to it. Broke knows what it needs. This is something else entirely. This is about being suspended in a financial position where you have enough to disqualify yourself from sympathy, but not enough to stop thinking about money every single day. You're in what I call the pressure middle, and it operates by a logic that almost no one explains. Here's what it looks like in practice. You're earning 70, 90, maybe 120,000 a year, depending on where you live. That number used to mean something different. It used to mean comfort. It used to mean flexibility. Now it means you're covering everything technically, but only if nothing changes. Your rent or mortgage takes a third of your income, maybe more. Your car payment, insurance, utilities, groceries, daycare if you have kids, the subscription services you forgot to cancel, the student loan payment that never seems to shrink. It all fits barely. You're not drowning, but you're also not swimming. You're treading water in a pool where the depth keeps increasing. The strange part is how invisible this position is. People above you on the income ladder assume you're fine because you don't qualify for assistance and you're not asking for help. People below you assume you're comfortable because the numbers look solid on paper. But you're living in a place where every financial decision is a negotiation with future you. Can I afford this vacation? Technically, yes. Will I regret it in 3 months when the credit card bill comes? Also, yes. So you sit in the middle, constantly calculating, never quite relaxed. What makes this trap so effective is that it doesn't feel like a trap from the outside. It feels like a series of reasonable choices. You took a job that paid well enough to rent an apartment in a decent area. That area happened to be expensive, but it was safe and close to work. You bought a car because you needed reliable transportation. You financed it because that's what everyone does. You started contributing to your 401k because that's what responsible people do. You got the slightly nicer apartment when your lease renewed because you deserved it after a hard year. Every single decision made sense in the moment, but the cumulative effect is a financial structure that requires your entire income to sustain itself. You didn't build a trap, you built a life, and then the life became the trap. Here's where it gets psychological. You start to believe that the problem is you. You look at your income and think, I should be able to make this work. Other people manage on less. What's wrong with me? And because you can't see the structure clearly, you assume it's a personal failing. Maybe you're bad with money. Maybe you're too impulsive. Maybe you just need more discipline. So you start restricting. You stop going out as much. You meal prep. You cancel a subscription or two. And it helps marginally, but it doesn't change the fundamental equation. Because the issue isn't your spending on coffee or takeout. The issue is that your fixed costs are too high relative to your income, and those fixed costs are almost impossible to reduce without a major life disruption. The term for this is lifestyle creep, but that phrase makes it sound like a personal weakness, like you got greedy and overextended yourself. But most people in the pressure middle didn't creep into anything. They were pushed, rent increased, childcare became non-negotiable, car repairs couldn't wait, health insurance premiums went up. The baseline cost of existence in most American cities increased faster than wages, and the gap quietly swallowed your margin for error. You didn't inflate your lifestyle. Your lifestyle inflated around you, and here's the cruelest part. The pressure middle is where you're most vulnerable to the next financial shock, but it's also where you're least likely to get help. You don't qualify for subsidies. You don't qualify for income-based repayment adjustments. You don't have the kind of liquid savings that would let you ride out a job loss or medical emergency without immediately going into crisis mode. You're too rich for assistance and too poor for security. So you exist in this strange limbo where you look fine and feel fragile. I've watched people stay in this position for decades, not because they're bad with money, not because they lack discipline, but because the exits are all expensive. Moving to a cheaper city means leaving your job and your network. Downsizing your apartment means breaking a lease or finding a new place in a market that's even worse than when you signed. Selling your car means figuring out transportation in a city that wasn't built for it. Every path out requires a short-term sacrifice that feels impossible when you're already stretched thin. So you stay, and the longer you stay, the more you adjust. You get used to not saving. You get used to putting off the dentist. You get used to saying maybe next year. What's strange is how competent you become at managing this. You learn exactly how much room you have on each credit card. You know which bills can be paid late without penalty. You become very skilled at making $30 last 4 days. And there's a quiet pride in that, even though it's exhausting. You're handling it. You're making it work. But handling it is not the same as thriving, and making it work is not the same as building something. There's a concept in engineering called load bearing. It refers to how much weight a structure can hold before it fails. The pressure middle is a load-bearing income. It holds the weight of your life, but just barely. There's no buffer. There's no margin. And because of that, you can't build. You can't take risks. You can't invest in the kind of moves that might actually increase your income, because those moves require time or money or both. And you have neither to spare. So you stay in the job that pays enough. You stay in the apartment that costs too much. You stay in the loop. And the thing that nobody tells you is that this position has a gravity to it. The longer you're in it, the harder it is to leave, not because you're stuck in some absolute sense, but because your nervous system adapts. You become very good at operating under constant low-level financial stress. It becomes your baseline. And when someone suggests you make a major change, go back to school, start a business, move across the country, it doesn't sound like opportunity, it sounds like chaos. Because chaos is the one thing you've organized your entire life to avoid. I don't think most people realize how much energy this takes. You're not just managing money. You're managing anxiety. You're managing the gap between what you thought this income level would feel like and what it actually feels like. You're managing the guilt of not being more grateful when you know people have it worse. You're managing the resentment of working this hard and still not feeling secure. And all of that happens in the background quietly while you go to work and pay your bills and tell people you're fine. If you're in this position, the first thing to understand is that it's not a moral failure. It's a structural position. And structural positions don't get solved by individual discipline. They get solved by structural moves. That might mean increasing your income, but it might also mean decreasing your fixed costs in a way that actually matters. Not cutting out lattes, cutting out rent, not skipping vacation, moving to a place where the math is different. These are big moves. They're uncomfortable, but they're the only moves that change the equation. The other thing to understand is that you can't budget your way out of the pressure middle. Budgeting helps. Tracking helps. But if your income barely covers your fixed costs, optimization only gets you so far. At some point, you need more money or fewer obligations. That's not a failure of discipline. That's math. I've seen people escape this in different ways. Some increase their income significantly, either by switching jobs or adding a second income stream. Some made a geographic move that cut their cost of living in half. Some made hard decisions about relationships or living situations that freed up money they didn't know they had. There's no single path, but every path required acknowledging that the current structure wasn't sustainable, even if it looked fine from the outside. The hardest part is giving yourself permission to admit it, because admitting it feels like complaining, and complaining feels inappropriate when you're doing better than so many people. But you can acknowledge that others have it worse, and also acknowledge that your position is hard. Both things are true, and pretending it's not hard doesn't make it easier. It just makes you more tired. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next.